construction checklist. Okay, thanks. Midwest has a checklist that the air traffic manager goes through. We sit down then with the directors over here and we talk about the construction project. We attend weekly, and again, I'm wearing my Truckee Tower hat. We attend the construction meetings, pre-construction meetings, and weekly construction meetings to the maximum extent possible so we can share information between the two. There's additional resources out there for you other than the NOTAMs. The NOTAMs currently, Truckee Tower does not input any NOTAMs. The district is responsible for inputting NOTAMs. We are not part of the district or the NOTAM manager system at the tower. So we coordinate everything, or they coordinate everything with us. They close a runway for crack sealing. They end up calling us and telling the tower that the runways are going to be closed. NOTAMs are available multiple different ways. I know FourFlight, I've not used it myself, but it's probably a lot better than this website. Construction notices and diagrams, those are out there. I've never seen a C&D put out for Truckee, mainly because we're not shortening the runways. We're closing. It's the way it's been happening. Or we're not relocating taxiways like this. But this is what you'll see in a construction notice diagram. Again, it will walk you through on how to get to these notices. Best practices during construction season. This is what I've already talked about. I fill out the checklist. Vince and I get together. We talk about the project, the timing, the closures. I send out a 10-day notice to the FAA called a system impact report. That impact report, then the FAA distributes to the NBAA, AOPA, the command center back in Washington, D.C. I can identify that, get that information out to the other users in the system so they know that Truckee has a construction project going on. In addition, I will work with Oakland Center, the approach control authority, overhead Truckee. If we need, like, how many people were flying when taxiway Alpha was getting rebuilt? And if you were flying a jet, you missed taxiway Foxtrot, you have to do a 180 and back taxi on the runway. We ended up having a 10-mile in trail restriction between jets, or we would hold them out over Lake Tahoe, over the fixed Delaney, if you're familiar with that. And we would bring them in one at a time based on that back taxing aircraft. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on that you guys don't see for what some people might say, oh, it's only a simple runway closure, or a taxiway closure, but it's really, in essence, it messes with air traffic to a certain extent. So this is all the stuff, plus a little bit more that we do. Tower will provide briefings. I was doing briefings to the controllers, not only at Truckee, but at Oakland Center as well. So here's the FAA's checklist. Midwest checklist looks pretty much like this. It goes through all these safety management risk systems. Midwest has a vice president for safety, and they review everything that we do, like this letter of agreement that we're working on for airfield movement, non-movement. I will send it to Midwest. They will review it. They will send it to the safety manager for a review. Once the safety manager approves it, it'll come back. It'll go to signature to Rob and Steve. Unless we get it done before the 29th, then maybe else. Construction, DBQ's already talked about it. Apron A2 is right now fall of 2025, the end of September is what the latest we've heard up in the tower. I asked Vince before when I was setting up this program, what was the next big construction project? The next big one tentatively is 2029 for the east end of runway 1129. Let's see, what's this? I could be retired. Anyways, weather. Everybody flies here. Everybody knows what we deal with. Snow removal in the winter, thunderstorms in the summer. Coyotes. Oh, wait, that's the next one. Is sun glare a safety factor? It is. I had a pilot just the other day go around because he couldn't see the runway. And he came around and landed on runway 2 at sunset, landed 29. If you're not comfortable, please ask air traffic control. The tower will work you into another runway. I was doing it right when I was closing. I was just getting ready to make my closing statement. He's like, I'm going around, I'm going to 20. Roger, Truckee Tower's closed. Use C-Town. So it's sun, yeah, so sun's a factor. Ponding, standing water. Vince, do you have any low spots on the runway that might have ponding or standing runway? I've never heard of any up in the tower, but this is part of the FA slide, so nothing. Snow and ice, yeah, we get that just for a few months out of the year. So we do have a TALPA, the takeoff, landing, and performance assessment. So the airport does their runway checks. They end up filing a NOTAM for the field condition, the FICON condition. They do it in thirds, and they give it number value. We then will take that in the tower and put it on the ATIS. And then pilots provide braking action advisories to the control tower operator, or the control tower. And then we will in turn give braking action advisories to pilots as part of a PIRA. The NOTAM is actually provided by the airport. That's that field condition. And that's where you'll hear on the ATIS runway 20 condition codes 222 or whatever it happens to be. It's automatically put on there. Thunderstorms, yes, we have them. Does it impact us? Yes. Taking weather observations. Mike Cook is back there. He remembers probably taking weather observations in thunderstorms. It's no fun. It's still no fun. And that's one thing, Amy, I'm really happy. I tell Tim I'm happy I'm losing my LARS certification. So I don't have to take another weather observation. But it's fun. Snow, fog, wind. Fog, we get that fog, we get the wind. Visibility from the tower. The tower is, because we're certified weather observers, we take all the weather, all the tower visibility observations. And then the non-visibility areas, or the areas that are visible from the tower, we already talked about, and that was also underneath that little bit. We talked about wildlife hazards, and there's nobody better than, you don't know Sarah. Sarah follows Sierra Sky Aviation, and you'll see pictures of cute little coyotes. And there's, from the post I saw yesterday, there's like 9 of them now running around the airport. So we do our best to see them up in the tower, and we take your report seriously. We look at them, we coordinate with the airport to see if we need to remove them. And that goes for the deer, that goes for the occasional bear, the occasional raccoon, and whatever else we have. And I kind of joke about grasshoppers, but who's tired of grasshoppers and grasshoppers? Those things are huge. Birds, Martis Lake gets them, but they're not really too much of a factor. I did have, who was talking about the bird yesterday? Was that yesterday? We had a conversation. Somebody was saying, oh, it was, I don't think it was the pilot's name, but he was telling me he was short. Oh, it was Dan. Did Dan leave? Dan was stepped out. So Dan was telling me that he was on final for 2-9, showing a couple that he had just met flying, taking for a flight. He's on final for 2-9, and out of the corner of his eye, he caught a big raven that was just starting to lift from off the runway in the infield between the taxiway. And so the first thing he saw was when it got airborne was how big it was. And he's like, I got to prepare to go around. I don't hit this thing. And it ended up, he didn't hit it. But I've never seen a raven that close to the runway that the pilot has reported back to me. So that information is valuable. If you can give that back to us in the control tower, we then can put an advisory on the ATIS, and we can also advise you real time on the frequency. So, and if you hit a bird, let us know, because the first thing we'll do is get spot on the runway, and they will go out and clean the runway. They'll take the remains off of the runway. And then if there's any damage to the airplane, we need coyotes. Airfield drivers. Every airfield driver, including myself here, in the next couple of days, needs to be certified to drive on the airport. Again, this meeting could potentially just be the stakeholders and the airport operators. So there could be a bunch of Vince's crew in here. And so this is kind of what this is addressing here. But this is what we go through to, who can access the airfield, how is training conducted. I will be doing that training as soon as I get certified, and giving access cards and all that kind of stuff. But the big thing that I want to bring up, and this is thanks to the airport, even though there's no vehicles on here, the airport's equipped all their vehicles with ADS-B transponders. I call them transponders, there might be a different name for it. But those you should be able to see them on your traffic displays in your aircraft as well. We have since coded vehicles yellow on our display up in the tower. This is an actual Truckee Tower display right here. Just no vehicles, but it works really well in the wintertime for us to maintain situational awareness of where the vehicles are at. Low visibility situations, we can see you taxiing in the fog if you're going out instrument flight rules. We can see where you're at. If you go to a larger airport, or some of the FAA airports are equipped with what they call an ASDX, Airport Surface Detection Equipment, and the X is just the model, I believe, the version. I kind of jokingly refer this as the poor man's ASDX, but it works really well. And it's just situational awareness only. We cannot use it for any kind of separation purposes over the tower, but it helps us out quite a bit. And again, letters of agreement really don't pertain to the pilots, but just know there are a lot of letters of agreements between the tower and the Truckee Tahoe Airport District, and plus other government agencies, Oakland Center and whatever. They are reviewed annually and updated as required. They are reviewed annually and updated as required. We do have a standalone runway safety area letter of agreement that gives the tower the ability to depart aircraft when an airport vehicle or personnel are inside of the runway safety area, but they have to meet all the criteria of the letter of agreement. And then what do we do from the tower? We say Cessna 21202, use caution mower, midfield, left side of the runway 29 clear for take. And then that way you know about the mower and we've satisfied our requirement. And the airport has satisfied theirs with a letter of agreement. Those are all the different letter of agreements on the right side that are between the airport and the tower. Special events can cause concerns with runway safety. So the next couple of special events, DVQ's already talked about it, the Fly Safe clinics. Next month, come see Juan Brown. You've never seen him. I flew with him in the Nevada Air Guard. He's a super nice guy, very knowledgeable, just retired from American Airlines, I believe, and is very active in the pilot world, especially backcountry stuff. Social media, a couple months back when they had the American Century Golf Tournament, you probably saw some posts that were put out by the airport. That was generated by a letter to airmen that Oakland Center put out, sent to the tower, shared that information with the airport that potentially this airspace could get really busy. And so we put it out there. As far as I know, that's going to happen next year. We've had one competition for the flight report. They are done as far as competitions go for this year, but when they do have the competitions, it really increases the amount of aircraft that use runway 20, especially when the winds are blowing over the south and you guys, the power are trying to land. And it's a delicate dance for the tower controllers to get that sequencing done and still be able to have them launch their aircraft safely. So that creates some issues. Issues that have been reported in the past. The second one, I'll just skip to that since we've already talked about non-visibility and the movement of the tower. There's really not much we can do about that. There was talk about adding cameras, but we don't want to watch cameras in the tower. That's not our job to watch those cameras to make sure that there's not another airplane in your hangar row. If you get to the end of your hangar row and you look down and you go, hey, there's a Cessna pushed back in the alley. Okay, use caution. Don't ask if you can go around the backside of the hangar rows. We did that when we had taxiway Romeo reconstruction that was approved by the airport. It is no longer approved. Don't ask the tower for that. We're going to tell you. Depends on who's we're not going to let you go. We can't let you go in that area. There's pedestrians, there's vehicles, there's a whole bunch of different stuff over there. That's just good. Wingtip clearances, everything else. They put up those mirrors. I don't know. Is anybody hangar attendants in that time of the year? They put up all the mirrors at the end of the hangar rows so you could see a vehicle and the vehicle could see you if you're in an airplane. They're all good. So the second one was reported. Has anybody been to the ATC 101 briefings that I put on along with Justin Martin from Oakland Center as part of the Fly Safe program? ATIS has been brought up more than once. The airport knows about it. It's an issue with not only the antenna, but another frequency on the other side that is the same as our ATIS frequency. I believe the antenna and the transmitter has been bumped up as high as they can legally go by FCC standards. So if you're out over the lake, probably not going to pick up the ATIS very well. If you're still on the other side of the summit, You're probably not going to pick up the ATIS as you get closer. Don't delay calling the tower until you have the ATIS. Give us a call, negative ATIS. We'll be more than happy to give you the ATIS information. Taxiway Romeo and Quebec markings have been brought up in the previous two RSATs. It's probably going to be brought up tonight. Quebec is marked. It's adjacent to the north side of the ramp, but Romeo isn't marked. It's not really the standards were explained to me last year, the FAA standards on markings, and it's something that we can look at again. It's really not a problem except for the Altaport runners, I believe, that aren't familiar with the airport. Everybody else that parks in the east is probably familiar with on the east hangar side. You're probably all familiar with Romeo. So we give that as a clearance, runway 2, taxi via Romeo Golf. Golf is the only one that's really marked. Romeo is marked on the movement side to get back in, but not on the non-movement side. Correct on the red. Yeah. Huge, and this is going to be on another slide, but I'll bring it up multiple times. Please read back your assigned runways. Please, even if you know my voice and I know your voice and you don't read back the assigned runway, it's my job. It's required that I'll say, I'll pick on you. No, go over here. It's the 10 hotel. It's the 10 hotel. Please read back your assigned runway. It's always required. It's always required. And for the most part, the students are doing great. And look at the two students. The students are doing great. And most everybody else is too. But please read back the assignment. And again, I'm going to bring that up again. Oh, wait, there it is. For pilots, please read back the assigned runways and hold short instructions. The air traffic manager is able to take that phrase off of the ATIS that says, please read back all runway assignments and hold short instructions at their discretion. The FAA orders allow us to do that. I'm going to brief Steve not to do it because we are not doing a very good job in reading back runway assignments. Hold short instructions? Most part, yeah, you guys will, then that's the way I'll get, especially if I'm going to 29 via Romeo Golf Alpha, I'll go runway 29er, taxi via Romeo Golf Alpha, hold short of runway 20. I get back, Roger, Romeo Golf Alpha, hold short at 20. But they didn't read back 29. And so I got to go back through that whole thing again and make sure that you read that back. So it really helps out. Progressive taxi instructions, when I made this up, phase 1 was in progress and pilots were ending up in the back 40, back in the West End hangar tenants trying to find a place to park. Hey, did I go to park? No, we can't see. But remember that display that we had that shows where airplanes, vehicles and airplanes are? A lot of us will look over at the display and we'll go, okay, no, you went too far because we can't see you. We missed you. And we thought you knew where you're going. So if you, and this can hold true for an airport you're unfamiliar with, ask for progressive taxi instructions. For controllers, this is something that I'm taking back to the tower. I just did my semi-annual technical training discussions in the month of July with all the controllers. And part of the things that I went over are, in addition to a whole bunch of things, review a couple hours worth of audio, either live plugged in with them, sitting and working the other position, or pulling audio tapes. I did 2 hours to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And then I have a discussion with them on their performance, and not only their performance, I highlight what was referred to when I was in the FAA as special emphasis items. And I continue to do that in my role at Truckee as the air traffic manager. And I'm going to, when I give Steve his briefing, and Amy, I'm sure will give a briefing as well. I think it's important to constantly, address performance issues if there are any. And we're lucky. The experience level we have at Truckee is amazing as far as the controllers go. But that doesn't mean we don't sometimes skip the rules, so to speak. So one of the things that I've talked about is open ground control before it gets busy. We have a tendency to open ground after it gets busy. And the problem with that is the services are for the airborne airplanes and the planes taxiing are okay. It's the IFR aircraft that want their clearance to open to Palo Alto, to San Carlos, and we tell them stand by. And then when we get a controller back up, have from their break, call them back from their break, we get them on to open up ground, and now they've got 3 or 4 aircraft waiting for a clearance. In addition, they've got to taxi people. So we need to be better up in the tower. And again, I'll brief Steve. We have a ton of checklists and memory aids up in the tower, and it was one of my pet peeves, not using that checklist. And so I kind of constantly harped on the controllers, use the checklist. We took it and we put it on the back of a clipboard that the position logs on. We write down the times and our initials every time we open up and close a position and change controllers. And so we just flip it over and we can read the checklist items. Midwest has developed checklists for every position, including combined positions. There's a position called controller in charge. So we use checklists, just like pilots use checklists. If you skip a checklist item, could cause some consequences for everybody involved. Same thing for air traffic control. We have memory aids that we have up there for runway crossing, lineup and wait, TIREPs in effect, runways closed, vehicle crossing a runway, aircraft crossing a runway, MO operating in the RSA. We have one for white toe, green toe, when they're up flying, helicopters, drones. There's a bunch of them, and again, they're only as good as if you use them. So I really harped on memory as a checklist. This bottom one was a result of the runway incursion with the vehicle, and I put an emphasis before I left, and I'll make sure it gets to the controllers again. In the new letter of agreement will be spelled out airport vehicles, and our previous letter of agreement wasn't in accordance with FAA orders as far as operating vehicles on the runways. It's quite clear the FAA wants, if you're on a runway, you're on the tower frequency. If you're crossing a runway for a vehicle, you can do it on ground. And what plays into a big role here is runway checks are done before the tower is open. So we want to make sure they're on the CTAP frequency. And most of the O&M specialists that do the checks before the tower is open are on tower frequency because they all want to be on the CTAP. The ones that open up and this letter of agreement is not in effect, and it will be trained that airfield drivers operating on a runway will be on the tower frequency. So the only way a controller knows what frequency you're on is to look at their touch screen in front of them that lists the frequencies and see a green light flashing when you're talking. So we're going to have to be aware to reinforce what we're going to train over here at the airport to the drivers, the airfield drivers. And then with the tower, I want to make sure the tower is ensuring that we at the airport are doing what we're supposed to be doing, and that is being on the right frequency. So best practice for drivers. This was brought up last year at the runway safety meeting by FISDO. I don't know how many people knew Larry Cheek, but Larry Cheek brought it, wait to start your runway checks until the tower's open as possible. We talked about it for runway crossings. Other than runway crossings, use the tower frequency. Again, this will be trained to the airport staff. Action plan. This is what will happen if we decide as a group we need it, and I want your input. If we need to identify something that needs an action plan, then we'll do that tonight. This is kind of the process. I would have to defer to Steve and Amy on how we're going to handle this, because this meeting again is more in tune to a federal contract tower or the FAA. And Amy, if I'm wrong, tell court. But there's the accountability of the runway safety program manager, and that office has not responded when I invite them to come. So I don't know if it's because we're not federal or what, but that doesn't mean we can't do our own action plan to address any items that you guys might have tonight. They will then be reported back to this group next year. Currently, there's no open action items, but this is what it would look like. It would get a description, the status, the completion date, and then it would also have, for any future ones, it would have a point of contact. So whether it was a tower issue, airfield issue, Vince, Jeff, Steve would be on that as far as that action plan goes. And again, if you have anything, we want to outreach. The instructor notes are blank, so I really don't know why this is in there. I think the airport does a lot of good outreach. I know the tower does. In my time as the tower manager, the ATC 101 started out as just a small group pilot briefing to a few of the pilots that went to this Lee Crawford's house, to his beach house, and Lee was the one that was probably about 5 people at the first ATC 101, and it's now bigger than this group. And so that's the outreach that I know the tower does. The airport has Fly Safe. Everybody in the Runway Safety Program office is committed to safety. And again, all these resources are available to you. More resources, even more. If you haven't seen this, when it does get posted, check back and look. It's pretty interesting. I watched scenario 2, I believe, and I was like, okay, it's pretty good. So take a look if you're interested. DBQ is a fast. Yeah. So David Van Quest, part of the FAA safety team. He can help out with anything too, as well. If you want to become a FAST team member, or if you want to participate in the WINGS program, well, you're all here, so you've already participated. Next up, coffee with the controller was kind of an idea that I came up with prior to this job being open to me applying for it. But Jeff supports it 100%. Steve, I know, is going to support it because he was one of the volunteers to come to coffee with a controller. It's going to be an informal event. Not 100% sure how we're going to do it yet, but it's probably going to be up next to the fireplace. And Steve will be up there, or Curtis. Curtis is another one of the controllers you have. And Curtis, he volunteered as well. So we have 2 really highly qualified volunteers to come up there. No PowerPoint, none of that. Just sit down, talk, complain, kudos, whatever you want to do, ask questions. Doesn't have to be truck specific, but I think this will be good. Other control towers across the country do this. So if you've ever attended one, well, that's kind of where we want to go. We want to get to a point where there's more than just a couple of people, but it's not a group of 6. But if it is, that's great. We'll just have to get the
Got a comment from one Raj Karwat, who's very excited to have coffee with the controller.
All right. Well, hopefully I'll be able to have some time to go down when we're doing those to sit down there with you guys as for safety, security, and always community engagement. The other thing will be ATC 101. Again, I'm going to encourage Steve not to let this one go away because I think it was my baby, so I think it was personally very beneficial, and it could just be me and everybody else. But I liked it. Next RSAT meeting. These are done yearly. August is kind of been penciled in on the calendar. I haven't really talked with Jeff from DBQ yet about the calendar coming up, but look for another one of these to follow up on anything we come up with tonight. It's your opportunity to say anything you want. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any safety issues that you want to see added to an action plan? If it's not runway safety, we can still talk about it. I don't have a problem with that. If we're not going to go into safety, but you have air traffic stuff you want to talk about, we can do that. Again, hundreds and hundreds of links. But any questions? Any safety issues you want to see addressed? Yes.
I had a conversation with your predecessor about taxiway signage down there. There's certain areas where, and I'm just wondering what ever happened.
I took that to, I think if you and I chatted about it, you might have handed it off to Vince. Sarah person was still here, and she came to the tower in her role as an O&M supervisor. And it's my understanding that all of the airfield taxi markings and signage is in accordance with FAA standards. And I'll let Vince.
We just had a Caltrain inspection. We can add signage, but we added it right now. Sure. I mean, there's so many transient operators and you know, it runway at certain places when it's not really clear.
So I'm supposed to repeat the question. So the question was talking about airfield signage and a report that was made previously, and if there was anything done with it. Hopefully you heard the response. Yeah, we can look at that. you know, and now especially in my new role working with Vince on that, I've got a lot to learn, a lot. And so we'll, you know, it's something that I'll definitely follow up on. You know, my apologies. I think I told Steve. I think Steve was up with her when Sarah was telling us about it. So if it didn't get back to us, okay. Anything else? Safety wise? Oh. Yeah, Sean.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. You guys sometimes. Well, that was this case. Also, the only reason I knew, it's still on the ground, was an hour was fine. But I think it's like all the tower and said, yeah, make them very proud. Oh, God, yes, sorry, fix that. Fix. My concern is you got 2 airplanes running back, both in the air. One sitting ground. And I was thinking about after that you put it, because it's challenging in working both frequencies. So that really does great challenge. Easiest way to do that.
Yeah, so synopsis of the question. How can we have people not take off on ground frequency? That goes back to that slide I had for best practices for tower controllers. And that is the FAA requires airborne aircraft for air traffic controllers. Airborne aircraft are supposed to be on the tower frequency. We need to do a better job ensuring that they are on the tower frequency. We can create an action plan and assign it to Steve. But that it was a topic of my discussions in the technical training discussion was to look at, it was all around vehicles, but this could also, we could add on to that as far as airplanes. And it's not just the 172 10 hotel that flies 2 laps of the pattern on the ground frequency and we don't notice it. It could be NetJets. You know, NetJets, the turbojet is supposed to expect to be ready when they reach the end of the runway. So I'm working the tower position. I have an IFR release on this guy. I say, Jet 373, Truckee Tower, runway 29 clear for takeoff. And I look down and ground frequencies lighting up and not the tower. And I'm like, Jet 373, you're supposed to be on tower frequency. You're still clear for takeoff. And it's like, oh, sorry, forgot to push the button. So it happens to student pilots. It happens to experience NetJet. I'll pick out NetJets because that was just the most recent one for me. So we could do better, and I will take a note and I'll work with Amy to see if we need a runway safety action plan for that because it does involve runway safety, and it's quite possible we can have that, and we'll put a timeline on it. If I believe it's 45 days, and then we'll go from there. So this will be turned over to Steve, but my new role, I'll follow up with Steve as the safety manager. I'll follow up with him to make sure that the tower controllers are doing a better job to ensure that pilots are on the right frequency. I don't know if we could do any kind of any additional type social media blast, tenant blast.
Yeah, we can put the report out, and it's come up. I don't know because there's an event. It's happened more than once. Recent past, in the past couple of weeks, when aircraft trained to be on ground in flight, not realizing the difference. So, anyway, you're in a headset, the controller is different. Like, you have one mic for my ground, here's my tower. On a headset with a splitter. Yeah, I think there's human factors, opportunities. Because I think it's something to be addressed. It's happened, if you're a separate incident, what it sounds like, I know too, within the past month, that's happened.
The only reason for it,
Yeah,
there's no issue.
right,
There's potential, but-
absolutely, yeah, no, I think it's great.
And then the only thing I want to follow up with is just. Like, I need to just say what we as about we achieve. Most professional, best controllers, any operation that.
So Amy, I don't know if you heard that or not, but well, thank you, Sean. Yeah, no, I'm extremely proud, and as Amy knows, I had my last air traffic manager meeting with Midwest last week, and both Amy and I and the vice president of the company were shedding a few tears because I'm gonna miss it. I really am. I'm gonna miss talking to all of you guys. Next Friday is gonna be tough. If you go out there and fly, I might have to pass that mic over to somebody else because I will get emotional. I know I will. I cried on my Finney flight in the C-130, and so yeah, no, it's been a great career, and we do have a great group of people that loves this airport and the community around it. So we're happy to have the current controllers we have. Midwest is working to hire some more for the next summer seasonal. Paige, most of you know Paige from talking to us up in the tower. She is going to stay on full time year round, so we'll need a new summer seasonal next year. They will need a new summer seasonal next year, but you're in great hands, and everybody up there just loves doing what they're doing and is so experienced. So thank you for that, Sean.
I had a question about just the names the way it is. When I find a reading, it's just the way it is. And I get the feedback. It's when you guys are creating units in a truck, you guys know what I'm about.
It is a digital ATIS, but the air ring portion, and Mike, I looked to see Mike's not back there. I'm pretty sure it's the air ring portion of the digital ATIS is not subscribed to. Is that
Yeah, so in their last count, I think there were 75 airports in the US that had like digitally is both for like it's up to the FAA. Something we've asked. It came up I think 2 years ago. We looked because digitally this was been spreading, and the FAA is like we choose because they're things they do, and Truckee just don't have the volume for it. I think from right when I first got here, it's going to grow, but for the here and the now, we just we don't practice that.
yes?
Any chance of getting the last frequency? Back all day, such a crazy.
There's some. The question was, any chance of getting an AWAS frequency back? My understanding is that you can't have an AWAS transmitting the same time an ATIS is transmitting because the observations are different. So the AWAS puts out through the ceilometers and other wind sensors and temp dew point and all that. They put out that AWAS data that comes to the tower controllers who are weather certified by the FAA to take weather observations. We then take that as a baseline, and we then look out and how many times have you seen the visibility a quarter mile freezing fog in the winter, but it was really 10 miles. That's because that little area gets packed in with fog. Same thing with the ceilometer. It just shoots straight up. How many times have you seen clear below 12 when it's really almost considered, I would consider it a broken layer to scattered because that ceilometer doesn't see it. So the AWAS data, and it was one of the things, and you might have heard me say this before, I was asked what would make this airport safer after an accident. My response was, get us tower certified, weather certified, and give me an ATIS and another piece of equipment. The ATIS and the weather came. The other one, there's a whole bunch of issues that I won't even address in either of my positions because when the tower is closed, Mike Cook's not here. The ATIS will broadcast the tower closed message, and we'll tell you we're scheduled to resume normal operations at 7 a.m. Class Echo airspace in effect, pilot control lighting, more information. That weather sequence that is in there is the AWOS 1-minute weather. So if you listen to the ATIS after tower hours, you're going to have to weed through all the stuff about the tower being closed, Class Echo airspace, but that AWOS weather is embedded in there, and it is updated every minute or two. Is it what minute or 2 minutes? I can't remember. It's what? Minute? Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Anything else from anybody? Yes, sir.
I think if I understood during your presentation, we were talking about access to ATIS, needing consistent broadcast, especially during complexity. And I think you mentioned conflict with another frequency that's out there. If we're already driving that as heavy as we can, and we have conflict that's causing this, is there any way we could apply for a different frequency that's regionally unique so that we would have better coverage? Which is like our program.
I don't know the answers.
Yeah, we look into it. What we did use, we did change the tenant.
Yeah.
Have we changed a couple other things? Anecdotally, I've heard it's gotten better, but I don't think it's as good as, like, it's a great question. I don't know how the FAA, the FCC does frequency clearances, created, but I think it's a question to ask you. Blair, going into it. Blair. Yes.
All right. But Sean, I'll throw that on if as my new role, looking at my boss, you want to create a runway safety action plan for the frequency issue?
I think we should.
Okay.
And Nancy and I were whispering, yes.
Okay. So we will create a runway safety action plan tonight, tomorrow, sometime this week. We'll put a tracking number on it, a date. I will share it with Midwest and Steve. I'll bother him some more. He's on a cruise in Alaska. If you guys have his cell number, text him and tell him to have a great time and congratulate him on his new role. But yeah, that's a good point. And it goes also back to best practices for the tower. We need to do better of opening that position sooner than later and manage. We do a really good job. Nobody leaves anybody hanging on brakes. Nobody leaves the airport. Everybody stays relatively close to the tower. Well, Steve, he's always down here in the pilot's lounge telling everybody he flies jets. I love Steve. But anyway, so yeah, we'll make sure that from wearing two hats from the tower, we'll make sure that it gets addressed, and from the district, yeah, we'll make sure that we follow up on it and try to get it better. So, all right, well, nothing else. Thank you guys so much for coming. Look again to the website for any of these resources that you might think are valuable to you. The QR codes are also pretty good. Just take a look at it, and you guys all know I'm now up here. Feel free to stop by anytime if you have any questions. The tower, I know I was talking with Ellie tonight. Tower tours are still available. I didn't bring any surveys for you to fill out tonight. I forgot to bring them, but look for those. They're usually up at dispatch. They're the Midwest Tower surveys on how we do in the tower. It provides valuable feedback to Midwest, who in turn shares it with the manager, who then shares it with the team. So any kind of feedback you can give that way, Midwest appreciates it. And so does the tower team, because it makes us better down there as well. So again, thank you for coming. And it's been a pleasure working with you guys for 7.5 years on the other side of the radio. I look forward to working with you from this side for the next 2 years.
Next event, Juan Brown. Yeah, everybody, thanks for coming in on Zoom as well.
Yeah,